Ati Yashoda Nandana Bhajajana Rana Yashoda Nandana Bhajajana Rana Yamuna Tira Manachari Yamuna Tira Manachari Jaya Radha Madhava Chunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Chunda Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Harivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Randana Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Randana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. John Vishnupada, Param Sabhavjakacharya, Ashotashata Srimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Raj Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. John Vishnupada Paramahamsa, Parijakacharya, Ashotashata Srimad, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Pramanande Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 9, entitled Appearance of the Demon Vritasura, text number 36. It is a prose text, so I'll just read it through. Nahi viroda ubayam bhagavati aparimita gunagana ishvarenav agaya mahatmaye revachina vikalpa vitarka vichara pramarnabhasa ku tarka shastra kalilanta karanashraya duravagraha vadinam vivadana uparata samasta maya maye kevala evatma mayam antardaya koniv arto durgata iva bhavati swarup dvayabhavat. Word for word. Na, not. He, certainly. Viroda, contradiction. Ubayam, both. Bhagavati, in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Aparimita, unlimited. Gunagane, whose transcendental attributes. Ishvare, in the Supreme Controller. Anavagaya, possessing. Mahatmaye, unfathomable ability and glories. Arvachina, recent. Vikalpa, full of equivocal calculations. Vitarka, opposing arguments. Vichara, judgments. Pramana abhasa, imperfect evidence. Sutarka, useless arguments. Shastra, by unauthorized scriptures. Kalila, agitated. Antakarana, minds. Ashraya, whose shelter. Duravagra, controversies. Anavarsare, not within the range. Uparata, withdrawn. Samasta, from whom all. Maya maye, illusory energy. Kevale, without a second. Eva, indeed. Atma mayam, the illusory energy which can do and undo the inconceivable. Antar daya, placing between. Ka, what. Nu, indeed. Artha, meaning. Durgata, impossible. Eva, as it were. Bhavati, is. Swarupa, natures. Vaya, of two. Abhavat, due to the absence. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. O Supreme Personality of Godhead, all contradictions can be reconciled in you. O Lord, since you are the Supreme Person, the reservoir of unlimited spiritual qualities, the Supreme Controller, your unlimited glories are inconceivable to the conditioned souls. Many modern theologians argue about right and wrong without knowing what is actually right. Their arguments are always false and their judgments inconclusive, because they have no authorized evidence with which to gain knowledge of you. Because their minds are agitated by scriptures containing false conclusions, they are unable to understand the truth concerning you. Furthermore, because of polluted eagerness to arrive at right conclusions, their theories are incapable of revealing you, who are transcendental to their material conceptions. You are one without a second, and therefore in you contradictions like doing and not doing, happiness and distress, are not contradictory. Your potency is so great that it can do and undo anything as you like. With the help of that potency, what is impossible for you? Since there is no duality in your constitutional position, you can do everything by the influence of your energy. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, being self-sufficient, is full of transcendental bliss, Atmarama. He enjoys bliss in two ways, when he appears happy and when he appears distressed. Distinctions and contradictions are impossible in him, because only from him have they emanated. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the reservoir of all knowledge, all potency, all strength, opulence, and influence. There is no limit to his powers. Since he is full in all transcendental attributes, nothing abominable from the material world can exist in him. He is transcendental and spiritual, and therefore conceptions of material happiness and distress do not apply to him. We should not be astonished to find contradictions in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Actually, there are no contradictions. That is the meaning of his being supreme. Because he is all-powerful, he is not subject to the conditioned soul's arguments regarding his existence or non-existence. He is pleased to protect his devotees by killing their enemies. He enjoys both the killing and the protecting. Such freedom from duality applies not only to the Lord, but also to his devotees. In Vrindavan, the damsels of Vrajbhumi enjoy transcendental bliss in the company of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and they feel the same transcendental bliss in separation when Krishna and Balaram leave Vrindavan for Mathura. There is no question of material pains or pleasures for either the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his pure devotees, although they are sometimes superficially said to be distressed or happy. One who is Atmarama is blissful in both ways. Non-devotees cannot understand the contradictions present in the Supreme Lord or his devotees. Therefore, in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, Bhaktya mam abhijanati. The transcendental pastimes can be understood through devotional service. To non-devotees, they are inconceivable. Achintya kalu yebhava na tams tarkena yojayet. The Supreme Lord and his form, name, pastimes, and paraphernalia are inconceivable to non-devotees, and one should not try to understand such realities simply by logical arguments. They will not bring one to the right conclusion about the absolute truth. Om Agena Termandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshma Tamana Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So the demigods are continuing with their prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and are making the point in this verse that all contradictions exist within the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that uh, because of this, the mundane philosophers, the modern theologians, as Prabhupada uses the term, are incapable of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead, of actually understanding Krishna, because of their uh, polluted intelligences, which are overcome by uh, material conceptions of life. And because the Supreme Lord is above material conceptions, one who is so polluted cannot actually understand him. One is actually required to take instruction from a spiritual master, from somebody who uh, knows more than we do. This is actually true, not just in spirituality, but uh, in every field of knowledge, in whatever field that one is studying, even if one wished to uh, discover everything for one's own, using one's own uh, sense powers and logical reasoning, it is simply inefficient. Just in physics, so the field that I studied, there are so many experiments and logical arguments and everything that if even if one person tried to uh, redo all of the experiments, who could find enough time in their life to actually do all of them? And even if one did have the time, does one have the money? Uh, I one time visited Jefferson Lab uh, in Virginia, which is a particle accelerator, and the beam, the electron beam, costs $10,000 an hour to run. Who has that kind of money? Of course, other than the federal government. But if I was just trying to do all these things myself, and that is just one facility, right? If I was actually serious about recreating physics for myself, I would not just have to do particle physics. I would have to do solid state and optical physics and everything. And all of these cost so much money as well. And even if I had the resources, if I was fabulously rich and had all the free time in the world, who says that I have the intelligence to actually devise these experiments and then interpret the results? Because, of course, in any field of knowledge, it's a gradual process of building up over lifetime of lifetime. One generation does their thing, and then the next generation uh, built upon them. Newton said that he was standing on the shoulders of giants. Uh, so who says that even, if I had unlimited resources and unlimited time, that I would even be smart enough to come up with all of these things? And that is just one field of knowledge, much less any other field of science. And even when you get outside the uh, natural sciences. So all of our knowledge uh, actually depends on hearing. And actually, from the materialistic viewpoint, it can be argued that if one is a materialist, one should not trust one's reason anyway. Generally, the argument that uh, opponents of atheism, of materialism, make is that they're the reasonable position, that they just rely on their reason to come to conclusions. And even if they say, okay, we can't learn everything that way, we can at least learn some things. But actually, that isn't necessarily true either. there's this interesting argument by a Christian philosopher named Plantinga uh, that if evolution is correct, materialistic evolution, then it is impossible to trust our reasoning capacities. Because what is the point, or what is it that evolution maximizes for? It maximizes for survivability, not necessarily truth, because it is possible, you can reason out, you can see that it might be advantageous to believe untrue things, right? If I, according to the uh, evolutionist viewpoint, we were all, just cavemen living on the African plains, uh, thousands or millions of years ago. And if I believed that the rustling in the bushes was a tiger and ran away, that was advantageous, whether or not there was actually a tiger in the bushes, because the one time that there is, I ran away. And it doesn't matter, the 100 other times uh, that it wasn't, right? Because it only matters if I'm right the one time. And if I'm wrong that one time, then, I get eaten and I don't survive. And that is the sort of thing that evolution selects for. The scientists say this is the reason why we pay attention to negative things more than positive things, is because there's a greater survival benefit. But if you uh, extend the scenario out to uh, its logical conclusion, then you can't really trust a reasoning power that is constructed by evolution to actually give you true beliefs. It just gives you beliefs that are better for survival in a certain scenario. But then, on that view, how can we trust anything that our reasoning is saying? And then Plantinga argues that you can't trust that your reason is telling you that there is no God, because, and that materialism is that the only way that there is. Because you can't actually trust a reason that is brought by and developed by materialistic or evolutionary forces. So actually, on the materialist viewpoint, uh, reason itself, at least the modern materialist viewpoint, reason itself uh, is actually um, defeated. But they say that their arguments rely on reason, so their argument is actually self-defeating. It leads to a contradiction within itself. But still, they uh, argue so much one way or another that that doesn't really apply in these cases. One time, Richard Dawkins was confronted with this argument that, can you really say that reason tells you that there is no God if you can't trust your reason? Then he sort of gave a non-answer. It's like, yeah, that advice might work, that argument might work in some cases, but probably not in this one. There probably isn't a God. Uh, just because Richard Dawkins in particular is not very philosophically sophisticated. He doesn't really know how to argue against. He doesn't really do well against these sorts of arguments. But still, him and others give so many uh, supposed arguments about God can't exist because of this, God can't exist because of that. If God existed, then he would show himself to me. Why do you think you are so important that you can call God and he will show up? All of these famous atheists, I'm sure at least in their heyday, I remember back in uh, when I was in high school, it was kind of a cultural moment that all of these, Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins, all of these big atheist sort of people were very popular at the time. And think about, I don't have the numbers obviously, but one could say without uh, too much speculation that they're probably getting speaking invitations all the time. That there are probably so many people, probably even up to today for the ones that are still alive. There are so many people that wanted them to come speak, but they didn't answer every time somebody called them. So why should they expect God to answer anytime that they call him? Uh, are they qualified actually to um, have God answer them when they ask him to appear? This is actually, I think, one of the uh, biggest things that might upset them, speaking as a former atheist myself. Is that what do you mean I'm not important enough to have God just show up when I call him? So it ultimately boils down to pride. Uh, as we read in Bhagavatam, all of us want to imitate Krishna. So what do you mean that that God doesn't just appear when ever, I say that I want to see him? And also, why do we think, of course, we have the Shastra, but speaking generally, why do we think that we know what God would look like when he does appear? If, when I was an atheist, or if you go to any of these big atheist names, if a dark-skinned cowherd boy with a peacock feather in his hair and a flute appeared in front of them and said, perform service for me, what would they respond? And they would say, who even are you? And if he said, I'm the supreme personality of Godhead, you asked to see me, I'm here, I came, they would say, that's ridiculous. Even many religionists would be confused by this, would be confused if they actually saw Krishna, God, in his original form. Because many have a very different view. I would actually say a very limited view of God, and what God's activities are, and what his form is, if they even believe he has a form. I grew up practicing Judaism, and uh, in Judaism, it is said very specifically that you can't confine him to a form. That, if you let any sort of, uh, image or form of God is confining to him. Of course, it's never explained why an all-powerful being has to be confined to not having a form. But in any case, uh, there isn't a recognition of uh, a form that God has. This also uh, carries over into other uh, related religions. For example, in Christianity, there's of course the form that Jesus comes in, but God the Father, as they call him, there's very vague uh, ideas about his form and activities. Now, the activities that most Christians think that God engages in all the time is judging people, right? You die, and if you belonged to the right church or believed the exact right things, then you have a eternal paradise where you enjoy God. I've actually heard that said specifically by a Christian uh, preacher before. Not that God enjoys you, but that you enjoy God. Uh, and if you didn't belong to the right church or didn't believe the exact right formulation of the doctrine that was thought up in 325, then you spend an eternity in hellfire. That is I actually saw one time, I don't know if anybody's familiar with uh, Chick tracts. Yeah, they're like these little like booklets. They offer a very simplistic version of Christianity, but the idea is that you just leave them like on uh, train, like buses and at restaurants or something, and somebody picks them up and reads them. They have like very silly stories in them about like with caricatures and things like this. Uh, you could probably find, some scanned online if you want to see how absurd they are. But in one, God the Father was pictured, and it was a faceless man in a robe sitting on a throne, condemning people to hell. This is the conception that many, even many religionists have of Krishna, have of God. Um, because they're, uh, and even the, um, in the more personal forms of, are the more personal aspects of the doctrine. What are actually the activities that the person of God is doing? The, it's described, Prabhupada basically spends the whole purport saying that God is the supreme enjoyer. But, for example, in Christianity, uh, in their personal form of God, that is Jesus, what does he come to do? Yeah, he's come to suffer. The entire point was for him to have a uh, excruciating death, to suffer for everybody for all of time. This, yeah, this is exactly the opposite of the conclusion of the Shastras, where Krishna is always enjoying, even when he appears distressed. He uh, is actually uh, enjoying. And, as I've been explaining, this conception is very difficult for people to understand when they are overcome by material conceptions of life, by the material energy. Many of the uh, conceptions of God that you hear today uh, are based in the ideas of us versus them, right? Prabhupada explains this kind of or alludes to this uh, in the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita, where he's explaining that the various religions that there are, Christianity, Islam, even Hinduism, are different than devotional service because all the various religions arose at a certain place and time. They arose at a certain point in history, and they arose at a certain uh, cultural and geographic uh, situation. Of course, many, or say most of these religions did start with some level of pure Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada throughout his purports and his talks praises Jesus, for example, saying that Jesus was a pure devotee and came to deliver Krishna consciousness at the level that the Jewish people at that time were able to understand. Prabhupada also says similar things about Muhammad. But, of course, um, one is that even these personalities weren't necessarily giving the entire full Krishna consciousness that Lord Chaitanya was giving. And also, there's been, uh, who can say how much of their teachings is actually uh, reflected in the current forms of such religions. But because of that they arose in a certain particular place and time, there is a hmm, conception or an idea of everybody who believes what we believe is good and everybody who doesn't believe what we believe is bad, which is, of course, completely uh, different than the more inclusivist approach of the Shastras, uh, which is like, okay, everybody is acting at the level of Krishna consciousness that they have attained so far, whether that is manifest in the more directly Krishna conscious uh, literatures and movements and practice, or even in these other religions. Uh, and if you don't make it this time to pure Krishna consciousness, you can come back next time and have another shot. You have as many shots as you need, right? Uh, and the point is that everybody is just making advancement. And the only way to actually make advancement, to actually understand the uh, seeming contradictions within the person of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is by practicing devotional service. Uh, I was talking about various atheistic arguments and atheistic creatures, one could say. And they say, they try to sit and reason out the ideas of God. Oh, well, can God make a rock so big that he can't lift it? Or can God be here and here at one time? And if God is all good and all powerful, then why do bad things happen? Yeah. Actually, one time Prabhupada was asked, can God make a rock so big that he is not able to lift it? Uh, and uh, his response, I can't remember the exact thing, but it was something like, yes, Krishna can make a rock that is so big that uh, he can't lift it, but then Lord Chaitanya will lift it. And of course, Lord Chaitanya is Krishna himself. So he'll make a rock so big that he can't lift, but then he'll lift it. This and those who are uh, overcome by their materialistic reason will say that doesn't make any sense. What are you talking about? This is just simply sentiment. But those who actually do the experiments, who actually uh, take up devotional service, they hear from self-realized people, and then to taste it themselves, to perform the experiment of devotional service, can actually gain this knowledge, can actually realize the person of Krishna, can actually become Krishna conscious, and have all of these uh, contradictions melt away and just uh, be in relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and taste the transcendental bliss of devotional service, whether in meeting or in separation. Uh, that is to say, either in external happiness or external distress, one will always be feeling the ananda of bhakti to Krishna. So I think that's all that I have to say. Are there any comments, questions, additions, subtractions, multiplications, divisions? Uh, Nobody is raising their hand. Do you have anything? Hmm. Mhm. What is making us make our lives so complicated? Uh, I mean, the short answer is Maya, but really, it's we all have our own particular manifestations of being an illusion, and uh, we all have our different ways of wanting to be Krishna. So specifically, for kind of this edifice of science, uh, for like Jefferson Lab or even other scientific endeavors, really, there's a pleasure associated with mental speculation. And, we also have the, saying that Prabhupada repeats that Muni is only a Muni if he disagrees with other Munis, right? And back then, Muni meant somebody who was very learned in Shastra and, was able to speak Sanskrit and all of that. Nowadays, the Munis are the scientists, right? And you only make your name, if you publish and you discover something new, so to speak. But of course, there's only so many new things to discover or important new things. So they end up researching this tiny, tiny slice of knowledge. Uh, and, uh, that's how, and, convincing themselves that it's important, really, that, stepping outside the sciences for a second, that, the use of gendered language in 13th century French literature is something that everybody needs to know. I know there's kind of this meme going around like a couple weeks ago about somebody got their PhD in literature and they did their thesis on olfactory oppression. Yes, about how smell is used to oppress people. Yes, how smell is used to delineate lines of power in literature and history. Yeah. Uh, so this is academia. And, you know, there's so everybody is trying to uh, kind of make their name and have that pride, right? And uh, really, the modern religion is this materialistic viewpoint. It only makes sense if you look at it from a religious viewpoint, right? In the sense that previously, we built like Notre Dame, right? Because the religion at that time was Christianity. And that is what we decided as a kind of a civilization to spend our resources on. Nowadays, the religion is materialism. So we decide to spend our money on these particle accelerators and, they're building a new one that's, billions of dollars, the EIC, and all these other edifices of, um, modern materialism, both on the scientific side and then also on the more social political side with, this kind of postmodernist oppression thing. But really, like the reason that people are spending so much money and time on this is because everybody needs a religion, right? Everybody is searching for Krishna that manifests in the material way through religion. And of course, everything is also through the modes of nature, right? So you have religions that are in the mode of goodness. You have religions that are in the mode of passion. You have religions that are in the mode of ignorance, right? I would argue that for a large extent, the modern materialistic religion is in the mode of ignorance. But that's really the reason why people are searching after these things, are spending so much resources on these things. Yeah, everybody wants to be happy, and everybody wants to, make a name, or who want to make a name for themselves, to feel connected to something bigger. Because that's all what we're looking for with Krishna as well. We want to feel connected in relationship with Krishna. But of course, the materialist has no conception of a personal God, right? So they only have conception of the universe. So depending on their particular flavor of Maya, they either want to feel connection to the universe, so to speak, that, we're trying to have to figure out the secrets of the universe. So that's the more like scientific side. Or, as the humanities go nowadays, be uh, connected to this kind of narrative of historical liberation, of, overcoming power structures and all these things. That's the more like postmodernist Marxist side, which is a whole other topic that I can't cover in, 7 minutes or whatever that we have left. So hopefully that has shed some light. All right. Thank you. Tarka Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you for your class. Provoked a lot of thought for me. And I'm one thought in particular I'm trying to develop, and I'm having I'm having some difficulty because I'm tired and
Hmm.
my power of reasoning is dim. But um, seems to me that this conception of the Christians that Christ taking on the sinful reactions of um, those who accept him. And interestingly, Siddhanta commented on this. He said that Vasudeva was greater than Jesus Christ because whereas Jesus Christ only agreed to accept the sins of those who accepted him as Savior, that Vasudeva on the other hand, wanted to accept the sins of all the inhabitants of the entire universe unrestrictedly. But I'm digressing. The point I was trying to make is that there is um, seems to me some kind of a contradiction that if God is all powerful, um, then why is God subject to
Moral
a
law.
system in which living entities have to undergo um, suffering for their sins? So if
Yeah.
Jesus is accepting sins because somebody's got to do it, what why not just simply if you accept that Jesus is himself God or the Son of God, then
Yep.
either he or God the Father, why can't he simply absolve everyone of their sins and nobody has to suffer?
Hmm.
If Jesus is the Son of God, whom God is supposed to have introduced, saying, this is my son in whom I am very pleased. If you're very pleased, then why would you want your son to suffer, especially needlessly, if you had the power to absolve sin? So it something does not seem right. It appears as though there is a system of karma that is greater than God. God
Yeah.
Himself is subject to that process. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, you agree?
Yeah. So basically, and when I've heard Christians, even very reasonable Christians, talk about this point, they always bring up the point of, oh, well, God follows the principles of justice, and God needed to enact justice because it's part of his nature to be just. So he sends uh, his son, who is also himself, to come and suffer, to fulfill, to have mercy while fulfilling that principle of justice. But where all these arguments break down, as you correctly pointed out, is that there's all of them presuppose that there's a moral law above God, right? That there's something, some principle that God has to submit himself to. Which, of course, if that was the case, why don't we find whatever made that system that God has to submit himself to and then worship that, right? So, yeah, you're exactly right. Um, that, it doesn't really make sense that a supreme God would would uh, be required to do anything really, but specifically to uh, have to subject. himself or his son to a mm, very horrific death in order to forgive the sins of his followers. If God is actually all powerful, then he could just, decide to do away with the reactions of such a situation of such sinful reactions. No specific thing comes to mind, uh, but I'm sure if you searched through the Old Testament, one could probably even find cases where, God just forgives people when they did something wrong. Of course, that's before Jesus even came. So he wouldn't be subject to the principles of justice in that case. So why later on? Uh, so yeah, and of course there are also different theories about uh, what exactly happened at the crucifixion. Some people say it's just a moral influence, which is what I agree with. But of course, the church has declared that a heresy. So I'll make the Catholics mad if I say that. Anyway, the doors are about to open. So thank you for your comments. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
केवल भक्ति तथा तथा बंधु मोई सावधान माते तो माते जहरा प्रसादे भावे भव तुरिया जाय हे तुरी जाय कृष्ण प्राप्ति होइगा लेते
Krishna Bhakti Hoya.
पिते दुनिया आख्या पिते दुनिया आख्या हरना तुझी हो मारे आशा से ये Shivachane Kupireda Dasama Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Vara Bhakta राधा रानी की जय, महारानी की जय, जय महारानी की जय, बरसाने वाली रानी की जय जय जय, महारानी जय, महारानी जय।
Time council production tradition of the three month and this is about month for about the this month kind of tried to about the John council production trial. So that the three sheet on about the dump the size on the about the number trial for the because they could still be not strong to do go up to Specification che time per cui definiamo ci invece come fanno lo fatto che c'è da come mai come mai che fatto che philosophy not good as ability I know some technology some it quattro indicate the entire work on the all with some of the needs all with some of the needs all with some of the needs all with the tree or all the show power I don't know the way. I don't know. Never. I'm going to great finals. What if we were very fast now? The only one we're going to service. I got to the lowest being very long. It was very good. Very hot, first. The top of the lowest being perfect. The levels up. Yeah, me, my heart. Broke my heart. Here's my Lord, for here to 5 years of struggle, very services. Our spiritual pastor meetings with one and where much so much the influence. Here's a shade of those people. We can try it all. Here, these